How on earth can a story about monkeys and bananas explain one of the biggest economic collapses in history? Well, today, we're going to find out. We're breaking down the Roaring Twenties, that spectacular crash of 1929, and the Great Depression that followed. And yeah, we're doing it all with a little help from our primate friends. So, picture this. It's 1928. The economy is absolutely soaring. You've got new technologies popping up everywhere. The vibe is electric. And even the monkey president is on record saying that poverty is pretty much a thing of the past. It honestly felt like the party would never, ever end. And then, almost overnight, it did. The value of, well, everything. It just seemed to evaporate. Millions were left with absolutely nothing. So the big question is, how did a golden era of prosperity turn into a decade of total despair? All right, to really get how it all fell apart, first you gotta understand the party. So let's rewind a bit back to just after the first Great Monkey War. This is when the good times really started rolling.
See, after the war, a few key things happened all at once. Factories switched from making war stuff to making consumer goods. The government made it incredibly cheap to borrow money, or in our story, leaves. And innovators, guys like Henry Ford, they perfected the assembly line, which made amazing new products affordable for the average monkey. All of this kicked off a huge, huge wave of consumer spending.
And this right here was the rocket fuel. Suddenly, you didn't need a pocket full of leaves to buy things. Banks were handing out loans for literally everything. Toasters, cars, you name it. This brand new idea of credit was a complete game changer. By 1925, get this, a staggering 75% of all household goods were bought this way. But here's where things start to get really interesting. All this borrowing and spending, it began to shift. Monkeys had all the toasters and cars they could ever want. So, where did all that borrowed money go next? That's right, bananas. Which in our story, of course, is just a stand-in for stocks. The stock market, which used to be this exclusive playground for the super wealthy, was now wide open to everybody. And that same buy now, pay later logic got applied, but with, let's just say, explosive results. This was the magic trick. It was called buying on margin. A regular monkey could walk into a bank, put down just 10 leaves, and walk out with 100 leaves worth of bananas. As long as the price of bananas kept going up, and everyone thought it would, everybody was getting rich. What could possibly go wrong, right? It was a perfect storm, really. The belief that the market could only go up became an article of faith. You had companies borrowing leaves to buy their own stock just to make themselves look more valuable. International investors were pouring money in. And pretty soon, everyone from teachers to janitors had a banana portfolio. The growth just started to get out of control. In 1927 alone, the banana market jumped by over 30%. The hype was really starting to build. Then, in 1928, it just accelerated even more, climbing another 40%. I mean, at this point, the fear of missing out was creating a full-blown frenzy. By 1929, the market had exploded another 55%. The price of bananas had absolutely nothing to do with how many bananas actually existed. It was just a bubble floating on pure hype. A bubble built on borrowed leaves and just blind faith. It can't last forever. And all it takes to pop it is one tiny pinprick of doubt. And that doubt arrived on Thursday, October 24th. For the very first time, this wave of panic selling just slammed the market. An unprecedented 13 million bananas were sold as monkeys just rushed for the exits. In a single day, the market plunged 11%. The confidence that had basically defined the entire decade was shattered in just a matter of hours. After a weekend of just nervous chatter and waiting, the panic came back, but this time with a vengeance. The sell-off on Monday was even worse than on Thursday. The market fell another 13%. Margin calls started going out all across the country, forcing monkeys who had borrowed leaves to sell their bananas at any price they could get, just to cover their deaths. And then came the final, catastrophic day, Black Tuesday. Over 16 million bananas were sold in this desperate, chaotic flood. The whole system was just completely overwhelmed.
By the end of that 1 week, the market was down 40% from its peak. Billions of leaves and wealth had just vanished into thin air. The monkeys who had borrowed to invest weren't just broke, they were in serious debt to banks that were now also on the brink of total collapse.
The crash wasn't just a bad week on Wall Street. Oh no, let's take a look at the aftermath and how this financial firestorm spiraled into a decade-long catastrophe for the entire world. The impact on jobs was just devastating and relentless. As you can see, unemployment didn't just spike, it climbed steadily year after year, from under 9% in 1930 to a peak of nearly 25% by 1933. It's just staggering. The numbers from this period are just mind-blowing. Unemployment skyrocketed from a tiny 3% to almost 25%. The number of banks failing each year jumped from about 650 to 4,000. And this wasn't just an American problem. It plunged the entire world into a global banana crisis. Let's just let that sink in for a second. At the worst point of the Depression, 1 out of every 4 working monkeys in the entire country was unemployed. They had lost their jobs, their savings, and pretty much any hope for the future. So, the story of the Great Banana Depression is this wild ride of incredible highs and absolutely devastating lows, all fueled by debt and speculation. It completely reshaped the country and the world, which, leaves us with one final, pretty sobering question to think about. Could something like this ever happen again?